right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our City Council meeting this evening on November 6th. As we've been doing for the last few months, we're beginning our meeting a bit early tonight with a presentation from Montgomery College on an update on the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building. We're very excited and thankful to have not only Montgomery College here, but Link, who's been helping with the community engagement piece, as well as the construction company who's going to work on this project. So we're looking forward to this update. As a reminder, we've been doing these sort of pre-council meetings over the last few months. We were lucky to have Councilmember Hucker here a few months ago. PEPCO has come. The U.S. Postal Service did a presentation. And next week, we'll have representatives from SDAT here to talk to us about tax assessments. So with that, I don't want to take up too much time, and I will hand it over to Provost Stewart. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, welcome, everyone. I want to thank Mayor Stewart and Councilmember Kovar for some of the work they've done with us to get us to this stage. We were here about a year ago to give you an update on the project. And so we're back to update you again on the construction phase of the project. Last year, we talked mainly about design. And again, I want to thank Mayor Stewart and Councilmember Kovar for their leadership on helping us engage with the community in a very effective way to create the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building. I brought some friends to help me, so you don't have to listen to me all night. I brought our friends from the Smith Group, Kevin Johnson and Wade Fu, who have done yeoman's work on the design part of this process. And I also brought Dave Coleman from Barton Mallow, our contractor for the project. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin. He'll walk you through the update of the design that we've been working on. Then he'll turn it over to Dave, and he'll talk about some of the construction considerations that we're just about to launch into. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. I'm Kevin Johnson. I'm the project manager from Smith Group. Been working with the college and the community now for almost 18 months, I think. It's been a while, but it's been good. So I'm going to just give some updates, and my colleague Wade will walk through the changes. But since we were last here, we submitted for mandatory referral. And since that point, we've had 2 follow-up design charrettes. We had one in June, and then we had one in early July. And those showed that the building has changed some since then, mostly I think in a good direction. But we did a realignment of, after mandatory referral, taking in comments from the community, also aligning with the budget. The building did get smaller. It got about 25,000 gross square feet smaller. It was reduced by that much. And that's what we came back and presented in June. It appeared to be received fairly well. And then we had a couple of comments that were taken in, or that were provided in that, and we came back 3 weeks later with a couple more updates. And then since then, we've moved into having project update forums, which Smith Group has played a smaller role in. We've been at the one that we had on September 10th, but Barton Mallow, Dave Coleman has started to talk to issues about constructability. The design is not finished, but it is certainly still advancing, but it's still intact with what was shown in June and July. So I'm going to turn it over to Wade, who's going to kind of walk through what some of those changes were.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wade. I'm architect at Smith Group. I'll kind of take you on a little guided tour around the building and what the current design looks like. So in this image, this is a view of the current approach from Tacoma Avenue and Fenton Street. This image is a little bit abstract because the trees in front of the building are ghosted out, and that is so you have an unobstructed view of the building. The building itself, you can think about it in 2 halves. On the left-hand side, in that sort of brick beige box, is the lab wing. It'll house teaching labs and faculty and classrooms. And then on the right-hand side, the shorter white glass box is the campus wing. And that'll house primarily the Math and Science Learning Center and classrooms. And just in front, that little shed roof kind of structure is the greenhouse. Now this view is a little less abstract. This is with all the trees turned on, so to speak. This is from the same view from Tacoma Avenue and Fenton Street. And just to kind of give you a sense of how realistic it is, in the lower right-hand inset, you'll see an existing photograph taken from the same vantage point. So the building itself will not be very visible from Tacoma Avenue side. Material-wise, what we're thinking about is earth tone, primarily earth tone materials that fit in with the campus and the neighborhood. So a buff tone brick with dark metal and light glass accents, and a very sort of generous landscape base. Moving up Tacoma Avenue, this is from the curb cut on Tacoma Avenue, just across the street from Bernie Aronson's house. In this view, you'll see the lab wing in the background with the buff tone brick with punched openings, and then the campus wing is one level shorter and starts to relate more to the Commons building that's in the foreground, just behind that tree. And to kind of give you a sense of the relative scale compared to Falcon Hall as it is today, the photograph in the lower right-hand corner is Falcon Hall to the left-hand side of the photograph, and the Commons building just kind of off to the side next to the lamppost. And again, it's the same materials. The lab wing is clad in this sort of buff tone brick with some natural variation with dark metal accents, and then the campus wing is accented with light glass and has a brick base to sort of break up the massing. Moving further north to New York Avenue, this is a view from the campus entrance off of New York Avenue. As you'll see, hopefully, there's about a 1-story worth of grade change from the left-hand side of the building all the way to the right-hand side. So the building itself is cut into the landscape. What you see in the foreground is essentially a landscape wall with the Math and Science Learning Center pavilion set on top of it, and then the laboratory wing acting as kind of a backdrop to all of that. This view is also quite abstracted since the trees are transparent to give you that unobstructed view, but this view is more realistic. It shows the trees in the springtime obstructing the views from the public, just to kind of give you a sense of how realistic this view is. In the lower right-hand inset is a photo from the same vantage point with the mature trees. And again, buffering the base with a lot of plantings and choosing materials that are earth tones, matching the campus and fitting in with the neighborhood. So just to kind of summarize the current approach, there are several design directives that we've exceeded at the outset. So the setback along Tacoma Avenue, in the kind of the right-hand side of the image, the darker dashed line that's parallel to Tacoma Avenue, that's about 110 feet setback. That's basically the setback line from Falcon Hall. The new building is actually significantly further back. It's about 160 feet back from that line. The park-like green space along Tacoma Avenue is maintained. It's that sort of triangle-shaped light green section at Tacoma Avenue and Fenton Street at the bottom of the page. And what we've done is to actually increase that buffer in the dark green. So we've added additional landscaping, stormwater management structures, more plantings to further buffer the view from the neighborhood. The height along Tacoma Avenue is limited to 2 stories, and what you see in that kind of hatched orange area, that is what we had previously committed to as a zone where we would build no more than 2 stories along Tacoma Avenue. But in fact, in this current approach, we've built nothing there. So we've even further reduced sort of the perceived bulk from the neighborhood. And then the use of lower level space to take advantage of the topography. It's hard to tell from the plan, but from kind of the entry from Tacoma Avenue all the way to the kind of curb cut to the northwest of the page, there's about 1 story worth of grade change. So you can think about kind of the west half of the building is essentially buried below grade. So that was a sort of a large design move that we did to sort of minimize the perceived height of the building from the neighborhood side. And then just to kind of hit on the community considerations, we've consolidated the labs along Fenton Street, and in fact, in the lab wing, all the major mechanical systems, exhausts are in that laboratory wing. It's, you know, more than 250 feet away from the closest house, I think. The learning commons and student activity are located internal to the campus quad, so that trapezoid shape that is actually the lower portion, that's the Math and Science Learning Center. All that student activity and the main student entry is actually organized to the triangle kind of outdoor quad to the north of the campus. So most of the pedestrian activity is indeed organized away from the neighborhood, reducing the building size and footprint. So in terms of the massing strategy, you'll see the building itself, the laboratory wing, relates to the massing of Science North, and then the trapezoid wing of the campus wing is kind of the same height essentially as the commons and the resource center. So the building is broken up into 2 halves, essentially one half relating to the Fenton Street side with the larger buildings, the campus wing side relating to the known scale of the resource center and the commons. And then reducing the building massing as perceived from the neighborhood. I think in aggregate, all of these strategies combined significantly reduce the perceived massing and bulk of the building. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Barton Mallow, who will take us through the construction overview.
Good evening. My name is Dave Coleman. I'm a project director with Barton Mallow, so appreciate the opportunity to just kind of brief everybody. I'll talk a little bit about the history of Barton Mallow, or at least a little bit what Barton Mallow is, and then we'll talk overall where we are in the process and kind of what to look forward to, you know, as we move down the road, and then talk about the initial phase in a little more detail. So Barton Mallow has been in business over 95 years, just across the country. Out of Baltimore in this market, we've been here over 30 years. If we look at the kind of the players on the team that I work with, you can see my boss, Vice President Barton Mallow. He's been with the company over 20 years. Paul Grossman is the project manager. So Paul will be one of those people that will be on site every day, helping to manage. Andy Lawless is our general superintendent. So Andy will be overseeing all of the other superintendents, and we start the demolition phase and other phases. Andy will be here day to day. For the initial phase, and I'll get into the phases in a few minutes, Gary that's another seasoned superintendent, will be here through the abatement phase. No work will go on site unless a Barton Mallow person is on site to manage, so that we know what's going on to be able to address anything that's upcoming. As far as Barton Mallow goes, you know, our values, you know, integrity, partnership, and empowerment. It's really important. It's a reason that I work there. Love the people, love the company. You know, we love the transparency, the collaboration, the communication with the community, the college, you know, as well as the council here. You know, the partnership. We understand that construction, you know, impacts people's lives, but we have to talk and do the best we can and communicate to make that better. And empowerment. If there is an issue, you know, all of our people are empowered to do something about it, to take action. Safety is, you know, of paramount importance to us, for our workers as well as the community. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes on, you know, what that means to us. So for us on any site, you know, we have the 6 principles of safety. This is how we make sure that all of our workers understand the expectations, so they know how to do their job, the tasks, and go home to their families every day. So the first thing we do is a site-specific safety plan. So that's geared toward the site and the specific challenges that are presented to us in the construction format here. And so we do that, and we'll review that with every subcontractor that comes onto the site. We do a safety orientation with every person that will be working on site. Before they're allowed to work, they'll sit in our trailer. We'll go through all of the expectations, not just on the site. You know, that's a big part of it, but there's also expectations of the neighborhood, that where you're allowed to park, where you're not allowed to park, and how to just be a good community member. We talk about activity hazard analysis, which is a detailed look at every activity, so that we've thought through with every one of our subcontractors and every one of their workers. They understand the hazards with what they're doing, so they know what to do. And so if something comes up, we know how to correct it. We do a stretch and flex every morning. So If you're going by the site and you happen to be able to see through the fence and the scrim that'll be on that fence, you'll see us when it's warm outside doing a stretch outside, just a kind of a light stretch to get it loosened up before we start work. We like to make sure everybody's ready for work that day and they start out limber to avoid any muscle strains or tears. Internally, we have weekly safety meetings, monthly safety meetings as we staff that up, again, because our focus is making sure of a safe work environment. And then internally, this is a part of Mallow, we offer safety incentives to our employees to make sure that we reward, great behavior. On the right, you'll see the term EMR. You say, what is that? That's an experienced modified ratio. So that's created by the insurance industry. And what they do is they look at contractors' past performance and they model that to the future and come up with a rating. So 1 would be average in the industry. So we're at a 0.69, so we're well below average, so we're a safe company. We worry about our employees and all of the subcontractors that work for us. At the bottom of the page, we've had several partnerships with the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health organization. So what that means is we partner with them. They come on early on the job. They do walks with us. Again, we're walking to make sure that all of the workers and the activities are going on safely. We've done that at University of Maryland in downtown Baltimore. We've done that at Coppin State and at Towson also. And the other thing it does, it just provides another set of eyes. All of those projects are within communities. So when they walk, they're not specifically looking at the neighborhoods, but they also give another view so that we're providing the best cooperation possible. Kind of the construction overview for this project, where we are today and where we're headed, is we're getting ready to start in the first phase, which is site prep and the abatement start. So there is some asbestos, some hazardous materials in these buildings that needs to be removed before any demolition can start and any other activities. And we're going to start that within the next few weeks. We move into the first quarter of 2020 when the abatement is done and certified. And that's when we'll move into demolition of the buildings, no wrecking balls, no explosions. We're going to be dismantling the buildings. And we get into late 2020 is when I think the foundations will start, so that'll be the concrete work, things going in the ground. We get into early 2021, that starts building envelope. So building envelope means brick, glass, doors, those kinds of things going on to the structure. We get into late 2021, and that's when we'll be inside the building working on final site work while we're doing the finishes inside with the completion of 2022. Just kind of a higher view of where we are and where we're headed on the project. Early site activities. So what have we done? Where are we headed today? So if we look at it, Montgomery College has basically decommissioned the buildings already. They've taken all of the equipment, be it fire alarm, mechanical access control equipment, things that they can use on this campus or other campuses. They've taken those to use them elsewhere. They've taken off their emergency telephones, relocated landscaping, everything that can be salvaged and moved around. They've taken great care to do that. The pool equipment has been removed, the pool is emptied, and the furniture has been removed from the buildings. The college has issued us a notice to proceed for the abatement work. So you might say, well, what does that mean? So with the college, we solicited bids for the abatement work from qualified vendors, reviewed all of that stuff, reviewed their safety qualifications and the qualifications to do the work, and basically together, got the proposals, submitted a GMP to the college, and now we have the ability to move forward with that work. I'm going to skip down a little bit to the campus fiber optic relocation. We talked about that at some of the community meetings. That work is done. That was all internal to the site, a few telephone poles that had to go in, but that's completed. So what you'll see, next week, temporary chain link fencing going in on site. So they will be pounding some posts into the ground. They will not start next week until after 8 a.m. They may show up, but they will not start till after then. It's not a huge noise thing, but it'll be something different. So I wanted everybody to be aware of that. And our trailer, a small trailer, will come on site. I'll show you where that is on the logistics plans in a few minutes. And the next 2 weeks, that abatement subcontractor will mobilize. And then, once all that stuff's in place and it's ready, then we'll start the actual removal of materials. Go through the logistics plans a little bit. The blue line that runs around the site is basically the location of the temporary fencing. That hasn't changed from our other community engagement meetings that we've participated in. As you can see, it runs down Fenton Street, Tacoma. It stays on the pavement areas on the corner of Fenton and Tacoma, so we stay behind the tree lines there. The sidewalks all remain open to the public, no change there. The fence line ties into the tennis courts and goes around there so that we can use the tennis courts for storage as much as we can. That keeps it away from the community. That's going to be, again, as much as we can on the site to keep that away from everybody. You will notice that the fence line goes across the little access road where the red line is. That's for emergency vehicles. That's not for us to use. There will be a gate there, and the campus police as well as the fire department will have keys so that if there is an emergency, they can access that like they do today. And the fence runs around, back and reconnects. The orange line is our proposed traffic route. For the abatement phase, there's not as much traffic as any of the other phases. Basically, the subcontractor brings his trailers on site that he'll be removing materials in. It's a relatively small crew. They will park on site the entire time, their entire crew. And they will not go anywhere off of, Fenton Street. They'll come down Fenton and not go into Tacoma into the neighborhoods. So there'll be no reason. That'll work out pretty well. When we get into the later phases of construction, there won't be any parking on site. And so, and the next slide will show, they're gonna go to the parking garages, in town. Barton Mallow will have somebody, we will walk through the neighborhoods 3 times a day, just to see if we notice anybody parking that shouldn't be. And if we do, we're gonna ask them to leave the site and they won't be allowed to come back. It's kind of a one-strike policy. It's in their contracts. We want to be a good partner and police that to the best of our abilities. The pedestrian access for the students is in green. Again, we work with the college to make sure they have access to classes so they're not interfered with, or they're interfered with at the minimum as possible. This is what I was talking about, the parking. So provide options. There's 2 garages in town, but we're going to tell them that's where they need to pay for parking. They can carpool, they can bring mass transit, whatever works for the site. What they're not allowed to do is park in the neighborhood or park on the streets. It's been a great process, I think, with transparency and collaboration thus far. From my perspective, as I think, I hope that goes both ways. I attended some of the charrettes before Barton Mallow was selected and watched that process go through, and I think the design forums have been a good venue to share ideas and communicate, and that will continue throughout the life of the project. That's how we'll all be successful. Some of the things have been put in place that will continue to be used. We talked about a hotline. The hotline number will be active starting Monday. So right now it's just a recording because we weren't doing any construction, but that is the number. So that number will be answered and the call will be logged so that we can provide responses, everything, documented so that nothing gets missed. We're available to schedule, various appointments. The website that I think everyone is familiar with is still active. It still has updates. Any updates we have will be posted there, or communications. If you signed up for the email, there's an automatic email update that you can sign up on that website. So there'll be more communications going out there if you signed up for that. So we encourage everybody to do that. And then we'll have regular project update forums as things will change. There'll be other communications like with the email and other stuff as the dynamics change of construction. As we're doing something different to try to give people a heads up. We understand we have to coordinate with the Pepco work, Tacoma Park and all that stuff. I know that's been a challenge for everybody. We've already been in discussions. This first phase, we're pretty light with traffic. We're still coordinating. We'll keep an eye on that so we don't burden the community anymore with doubling up on any effects that go through with that. So quick go through. Hopefully it was enough information, but I guess we can have a discussion now.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone for this, and having spent my afternoon with folks and doing the Purple Line construction, I'm like, thank you. This is like night and day. So I do know Councilmember Kovar sent around sort of some of the information regarding the construction that we have been talking about. And there was one question that I think is easy just to clarify regarding weekend work and whether or not you would be working on Sundays.
I don't believe we would work any Sundays.
Yes, okay. So, and when would weekend work be needed, if it is needed?
So the weekend work is makeup work for any weather impacted stuff during the week. You just can't make up days out of the air, so that's when those Saturdays will most likely happen.
Thank you. And I just want to recognize we have a number of our council members here that you didn't get a chance to meet before. We have Councilwoman Kostick, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Siemens is here, and I just want to recognize Ruthie from County Councilmember Hucker's office. First, I'll open up to our council members. Anyone have any questions or comments? Councilmember Kovar.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I appreciate the clarification about the Sunday piece of it. And we did have this document that we developed, and I think you've sent it around. I've sent it to some of the people in North Tacoma, and I think it's a helpful document because it lists a whole series of guidelines or protocols that will be followed when the construction phase becomes more active. And there's a couple of things I wanted to ask about that in addition to the weekend point that the mayor mentioned. And I do want to say that the mayor and city staff were very helpful in preparing that document. And the document is based on input and feedback that we had gotten from residents, so it's not something that just popped out of the blue. But before talking about the other questions I had, I just wanted to say the overriding thing to me is that it's vital, and we've talked about this, but I just wanted to say it for members of the public and the residents, the communication in an ongoing way, that's going to determine the extent to which this is somewhat tolerable and manageable, and I think it's going to be challenging for people in the neighborhood regardless. But I just want to highlight in particular that a couple of the things that we have in the document, and that'll be posted, and everybody, if you haven't gotten it yet, I think we even have some hard copies of it here. We're talking about regular quarterly meetings to just discuss whatever kinds of things come up, but then in addition, the ability, and that could be done through that 800 number or in other ways, you're not limiting it to the quarterly meeting, so if something else emerged that was more urgent, that a meeting could take place on that as well within the community. Does that match your understanding, Dave, of how?
Yes, sir. And
that
what we
works?
talked about was really making sure that there's enough communication and that to have those meetings when something is changing, especially. You know, if there aren't big changes, we may decide one quarter may or may not make sense depending on the activities. But again, we're open to do it. It's being prudent with the community's time and everybody's time. But as often as we need, yes.
Yeah, and I think we, you know, if it is essential, we can make them monthly or whatever. I think quarterly was the first idea that we had. And I do want to talk about if there's some sort of emergency situation, obviously notifying the neighborhood about what's going on is a key part of this. Occasionally, this being a construction situation, sometimes things could not work out quite the way expected. And I don't think for me it would be don't fix it and tell everybody first. I think for me it would be fix it but tell everybody as soon as possible. And one of the problems we had with PEPCO and WSSC to me was that when there were things like that that fell outside the expected parameters of the project, you know, a water main was broken or whatever it might be, we'd only hear about that much later, even after it had been stabilized. So to me, if something like that happens, of course we want you to stabilize the situation, but not have us find out the next day or week or month that something like that had happened. So can you talk about that a little bit too?
I think you well stated it. I mean, in an emergency situation, the first thing you have to do is deal with the emergency, whatever that is. And then within a reasonable time frame, you have to send notifications out so people are aware. But the first thing is in any emergency, and I do want to make it clear too, you know, on the hotline, if there is a true emergency, you need to call 911 or that's the first call. That hotline is, you know, for our construction stuff. But if there's a true emergency, please make sure you take care of yourselves too.
Right. And then so just two more specific things. I think the issue, and you touched on it with the fence, the thing that's most likely to be of concern to residents, we have some residents here and they can comment on other issues as well, of course, but is noise. And we have city noise ordinances. Technically, the work would start as early as 7 o'clock, but I think when we've been talking with you, you mentioned there's this warm-up period for the workers and other things. Can you just talk about how you envision, especially the first hour, because as I understand it, you've agreed to attempt to limit to some extent what happens that first hour.
What we've talked about, you know, in all the meetings is that the fence itself, so Barton Mallow employees, they're in the trailer, may show up earlier as they try to get their work done. That's not physical work on that. They're in the trailer kind of getting ready to support the subcontractors. The fence, the gate actually will open at 7 o'clock so workers can come into the site. First thing we do, as I mentioned earlier, is a stretch and flex. I know that there's been a strong desire to push the start time back to 8, and I've not been able to commit to that yet. There is a stretch and flex in the morning, and that's 10 or 15 minutes, and then workers are going to get on their way. They can't, obviously, that second start pounding things. But there's going to be a little bit of a break-in, but it's not the full hour. It's a 15, 20-minute, maybe a 30-minute, depending on what we have going on and what we need to relay to our subcontractors. Hopefully that answers your question, Councilman.
Yep, yep. And then last thing is soil issues. I think you may have seen that some questions came up about the testing of the soil and whether there are contaminants or other toxic materials in there and how that would be handled. So if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the soil reports that have been done are posted on the website for everybody to see. Please review them at your convenience. And then you asked, it's very typical in construction. Any site we go, this is reviewed with our employees as well as every one of our subcontractors. Should you encounter something that's questionable, stop the work. Come get Bart Mallow first. We'll talk with the college and have appropriate steps taken, whether that's testing or whatever, but we don't work through it. We stop work and assess what is going on, what's been discovered. So hopefully that, again, answers your question.
Just with the tests that was already done, was anything found that's
I'm
concerning?
not aware of anything. I didn't read anything in those reports to date.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Kovar. Any other questions? All right. Well, I just want to say, this this is live, and we are also recording it, even though there aren't a lot of people here this evening. I promise you people do watch this. And also, we just really thank you all for coming this evening, particularly, I think, for our colleagues on the City Council who haven't been as intimately involved in this whole process as Councilmember Kovar and I have. It's great to meet the whole team, Link, the architects, the college, and the construction firm as we move forward with this project. So thank you for coming this evening, and I don't know if anyone from the college has anything else to add? All right, welcome. All right, we'll get you home before 7. Thank you.
Thank you.